when you look at the fertility rates, I talked about this last week in the U.S. and Europe, they're collapsing.
Right.
And it's not just like, oh, look, they're down, because they were down before. It's worse now.
Yeah.
It's worse.
Yep.
But I will say the path towards winning the culture war is actually really simple at this point too. It's just anybody who wants to win just needs to have 5 kids.
It's time that we have a serious conversation on babies and why it is that babies are not being produced at the rate they need to be produced. I can already hear somebody screaming, you're all about procreation, and guess what? I am. The thing is this right here, this conversation has not been brought up enough, or it's been kind of kicked under the rug and nobody really truly wants to confront it, especially in the day where ladies are being basically told to abort their children for the sole purposes of birth control. That's pretty much what abortion has turned into nowadays. Now, I've given you guys my thoughts on abortion itself. I am very, very much a pro-lifer. If you're turned off by that, I'm sorry. I'm not going to apologize to you. And by the way, when I say I'm sorry, I'm saying I'm sorry in the sense that I really and truly don't know how to accommodate you, because I'm that pro-life. The only time that I'm actually okay or understanding towards the act of abortion is in the event that the life of the mother may be at stake. But even in that one there, I'm still kind of pushing for the child to, I'm still pushing for both outcomes, meaning both parties win, meaning the mother and the child both, but that's another conversation altogether. Now, I've talked about this particular issue before, and I'll talk about it again in the near future. More than likely, it's going to be in video essay format, but still, I want to go ahead and kind of go through this one more time. There are certain videos that I've made on this platform that discuss what was going on in the schools, what was going on in the colleges, especially with the gender ideology push, and then to go on top of that, everything that was going on in elementary schools. And I asserted right around the time of the quote-unquote what was it, the Don't Say Gay bill, which was really called the Parental Rights Act. The left took over that and hijacked it. But thank goodness for certain people out there, they were able to actually get that little narrative blunted, and people kind of actually found out what it was. It was actually a bill that protects the parents' rights to go in there and actually keep all the craziness out of the classrooms. But then again, though, for the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, he decided to only make it applicable to the 3rd grade, at least as far as his first term was concerned. I thought he should have at least gone to the 8th grade, but that's not the issue here. The thing that you had to understand was at that time, it was coming out that conservative families were having 2 children per one household, and maybe what was going on was the Democratic Party was allowing this type of stuff to go ahead and be normalized in the classrooms and stuff because they wanted to ensure that they could create another voter base for the future. Yes, the rabbit hole does in fact go that deep. Everything that happens today is all about politics. We're at a stage of baby making that is actually a very low, meaning that we're not making enough babies at all. Now, I asserted in a couple of other videos, which of course will be reappraised and redone next year in better overall format, that is a certain little phrase, WRT, which I can't actually say here without getting a label put on the video itself, versus something called BRT. I assessed that it was BRT, and I'll let you guys kind of figure out what the acronym is, but don't worry, I'll leave the video in the description box. That with the current murder rate, the current crime rate, the current rate of abortion, the fact that the birth rates were down, especially in one particular community, the reason why they were bringing illegals over was so that way they could not replace the W's, but actually replace the B's. I stand by that. I stand by that 100%. You're never going to change my mind. That's actually what that's what the hell I kind of came to a conclusion on, and you're never going to change my mind on that because I don't know if you guys know it or not, but the Democratic Party, for the most part, they love to rely more on the overall minority vote. We'll explain identity politics a little bit more tomorrow because there is a video coming out tomorrow, which is going to be on Friday, where I'm going to be releasing 2 videos on this topic yeah. There's a problem right now, and of course, with the situation in Israel and Gaza, the administration's now sudden push, or this sudden anti-Islamophobia push, is going to alienate both sides of the aisle, and it's very, very possible that a lot of these people are just going to say F it and not show up in 2024. But we'll discuss that more in the next video, or one of the 2 videos I have planned for tomorrow. This video right here, for the most part, is just about good old-fashioned baby making and why it is that the lack of babies is actually a problem. Let's go back to that fatherly.com article that I bring up all the time. Two kids per conservative household to 1 liberal per liberal household. That seems to indicate the conservatives in the near future are probably going to outrank liberals as far as overall population is concerned, as far as overall voter class is concerned. Voting is a very, very weird thing, especially given the fact that politics oftentimes changes a lot in this nation. And also, to go on top of this, you've also got the census that happens every 10 years, which determines how the electoral college is going to, or how many electoral college votes each state is going to get. For example, in 2020, in the state of New York, I think had 32 electoral college votes. Now it's like 20, no, it was 29, now it's at 26. Florida had 29 electoral college votes, and now they have 32. A lot of New Yorkers moved to Florida. Also, a lot of Californians moved to Florida as well. Same thing happened in the state of Texas. Texas gained as well. And, of course, there was a voter shift within the Hispanic community to the right, where it is the whites actually went to the left. So it makes you kind of wonder why it is that we're bringing in so many illegals, why it is that we're bringing in so many people across our border. And of course, the border crisis is not just those who come from South America or south of the border. It's also extended, as I've shown in other videos, it's also extending to the Middle East. A lot of people are coming in, and people fear this Israel-Gaza conflict is going to result in more Palestinian refugees. But we'll discuss that a little bit more in tomorrow's video, but I'm just using that as an example of what's up. Now, before we get any further, let's go ahead and get to the initial report, and we're going to come back on the other side. We're going to discuss this much, much deeper, because there's a lot in this video that I think is going to be, I would call it a bit of a warning that turns into a black pill, then it turns into a red pill, and then it turns into a white pill. So make sure you guys stick around for the full video. Let's go ahead and roll it.
This has dropped to just 11.1 per 1,000 people. On an irreversible path of economic decline. In 2007, the birth rate was 14.3 births per 1,000 people. The latest year with data, this has dropped to just 11.1 per 1,000 people. The dramatic fall in births and an expanding aging population, experts say, could force a rise in taxes to cover programs like Medicare and Social Security, leaving less disposable income available to bolster spending. Elon Musk has previously warned that the decline is now the biggest threat to civilization, with experts warning it will have a damaging impact on society. It really will. The largest decline is in Utah, and that's worrying because we got a lot of conservatives in Utah, a lot of libertarian-minded individuals as well. The smallest decline is in North Dakota, so okay. You take a look at this.
That right there seems like a bit of a black pill. The overall birth rate is down. The overall abortion rate is up, especially in one particular community, which I've talked about in other videos before. And like I said before, we'll be discussing more in other videos. But the thing is this right here. There's also a bit of a red pill here, because a lot of this stuff about not having enough babies, and of course people saying that, look, they're just trying to produce babies of a different ethnicity. I don't fully buy that second thing that I said. No, we're not producing enough babies, but it's not for the reasons that Tim thinks, which we'll get to the other half of this little thing here in a second. The real reason why they're doing this is they're trying to implement one-party rule. Go back to what I said at the very beginning of the video, where it was that I talked about the whole indoctrination in classrooms, the whole gender ideology stuff, which I did videos on before. The real reason why they were doing that was they were trying to normalize it, so that way kids could say, okay, well, I don't really have a problem with this, but in reality, what you're really doing is you're actually traumatizing the child by giving them something so outer worldly they won't be able to comprehend it. They'll never understand why in the world it was they were exposed to it. And I've also said in previous videos that these parents who carry these kids to drag shows and stuff, they're the ones who are more at fault rather than the actual drag show or the bar owner itself. The parents themselves, they're the ones who actually decide to take their child to these places, and they're the ones who are actually at fault. The idea was to try to indoctrinate a child at a very young age, which of course is sick and twisted. I mean, you're already indoctrinating people at colleges, but the thing about college is this here. Normally, after you get out of college, what happens is that the realism goes ahead and hits you right away. Typically, a few years after you get out, when you're working at Starbucks or you're working a retail job, rather than working in the field that you went to school with. A lot of times, people tend to get red pilled during that entire process. So what they do is they go from being very, very liberal to a little bit more left center, then eventually right center, and over time, they have kids or whatever, they become more conservative. Oftentimes, this leads to more working class people than it does actual suburbanites. But then again, those suburbanites, of course, are shifting more and more to the left, while people who live in big cities are starting to actually shift towards the right to a certain degree. But we'll talk about that more in tomorrow's video, especially when we talk about this issue that the administration is going to have, especially this whole anti-Islamophobia push thing, or Islamophobia. I don't see how the hell you could thread the needle. If anything, what's probably going to happen is you're probably going to lose both sides of the argument on that one. But we'll talk about that more tomorrow. So this right here does seem a little bit concerning. Well, like I said, what they're trying to do is they're trying to indoctrinate the kids that are already in school now, while at the same time trying to replace certain people. It's not about having babies. or at least it's about having babies to eliminate one particular ethnic group, which I've talked about before. But if I do speak about this on this channel, at least as far in this form here, chances are the video is probably going to get struck or it's probably going to get blocked. But still, at the same time, the thing that you have to understand is that it's not so much about creating a brand new ethnic group. It's more about replacing another one and bringing in a whole brand new voting block. You see, when you bring in more and more people, if they automatically think, well, they got the country on for free, basically, on this particular dime here, they're going to think about the leader who made that happen. They're going to think about the weak, old, frail Joe Biden. But, of course, we'll talk more about that tomorrow. That's who they initially are going to equate things with. And, of course, after a couple of cycles, they're going to then realize that the policies that they've been living under, quite frankly, are trash. And many people believe this could lead to a brief period of outright communism or socialism, but we'll save the white pill more towards the end of the video. The thing that you have to understand is that this entire thing is about one-party rule. That is what this entire thing is about. It's always about politics. Yes, politics connects to everything. What's going on in the Middle East is going to be used for politics. I'll give you another example, something I'm going to go ahead and call right now. The Russia-Ukraine affair. Ukraine has lost about a quarter of their country's overall land mass. It's been claimed by Russia, the Donbass, and a few other regions. And I have a feeling that after this next winter offensive, the Russians are probably going to then own 33% of the land. It's going to be urged that Volodymyr Zelensky enters into a ceasefire or a treaty with Russia. And I can promise you right now, after all the dead, that the Biden administration will then come out and say that they mediated this and this is actually a victory. Now, why in the world would they do this? Well, they got to find a way to get reelected in 2024. I didn't mention it wholeheartedly, but very, very briefly in a previous video that Mayor Muriel Bowser of Washington, D.C., now all of a sudden she's pro-police. Well, why is this the case? Well, you got to keep certain moderate voters in place is the reason why you're doing that. However, you're running the risk of alienating some people on your other side, the much, much more far left radical side. But the thing is this right here. Everything that happens in this world today, regardless of what the subject matter is, always leads back to politics. Everything has been made political. And, of course, it's not considered to be politically correct if you say that out loud and actually call it out. Fact of the matter is the country's not producing enough babies. So what's the result of this? Well, you're starting to use abortion now as what? Birth control. People are not wanting to have kids, except for conservative households who typically tend to love their children, whereas liberal households don't love children, so therefore they only have one. They typically view that one child as a bit of a burden. I don't think I need to give you that guys too many examples. There are some liberal households that don't view their kids as burdens, but of course the generation that we're producing thinks responsibility is just good old-fashioned bad. We'll be discussing that more on the weekend. But then you get to the other half of this little discussion.
The population decline in California, it has dropped by 31.3%. I ain't crying about it. You look at New York, 20%. Illinois is 28%. Texas is 24%. Now, here's the good news. And this is where it gets interesting. Bad news for liberals. In Nebraska, 18. In Iowa, 16. Missouri, 19. Arkansas. The point is, conservative-leaning states, they tend to be doing all right or better than many of these blue and liberal states. Georgia's down. Florida's down quite a bit. But, it's not absolute. Pennsylvania's at 16. Maine is at 18. Here's what we need. People need to have babies. Lots of babies. And I'd recommend if you're libertarian, conservative, post-liberal, whatever, freedom faction, as I like to call it, have a lot of babies. Oh, what's that? Everyone's saying, Tim, why don't you have babies? Working on it.
States, or is it the reddest of states? Is it the purple states? Well, I've been saying for a long time that for the most part, it's the bluest of states that a lot of these issues come from. And of course, there is also one more argument that if enough libs move from one area and they move to an area to try to make it red, and I'll give you a great example here in a second, then many people believe that just simply the conservative population, the population that's left behind that can't move, just eventually becomes conservative over time. We've actually seen this in the past couple of election cycles. We'll use the state of California, then I'll use the state of Texas here in a second. The state of California has always been hyper-liberal to a certain degree. At one point in time, it was actually hyper-conservative. It began to get more and more liberal during the 90s, and eventually you had a couple of Democrat governors, Gavin Newsom, the one that they want to run out there, and they keep saying they're going to run it in 2024, which I don't think is going to happen. I think his real goal is to run out there in 2028. But the thing is that you have to understand is that these places are very blue. Well, in 2016, Hillary Clinton, she got like 8.4 million votes. Trump got like 3.9 million votes. Gary Johnson, I think he got his biggest vote share in that state. I think Jill Stein did too. That was a massive landslide, right? Okay, 2018, the numbers begin to narrow up just a little bit more. And then in 2020, it's like 11 million Democrat votes to like 6.6 million Republican votes. So obviously, there are a lot more Republican votes were added in 2020. But of course, a lot more Democrat votes were added in 2020 as well. Almost like the entire population was voted. Of course, we all know what really happened. But still, the Republican candidate was not going to win that election. But in 2022, something happened. Republican Party they decided to invest in ballot harvesting. And they also got more people on their side to vote, and they actually did better on the lower level, state, local, and of course congressional level. Some congressional seats were added. Same thing happened in the state of New York too, which is also going to come into play in this very next example. The state of California had this push to try to send more and more liberal voters to the state of Texas and to hope that they could blow the state up. However, Texas has become such an economic bastion that a lot of people who were more middle of the road and conservative, they left states like Wisconsin, they left states like Michigan, they left states like Ohio and Indiana, which is already hyper red, and even Pennsylvania and even southern portions of Illinois, which is just going to be hyper blue, as already is. It's also included states like Missouri, which were already hyper red, that actually counteracted a lot of the liberal gains. It actually snuffed a lot. And then in the last election, presidential one, Trump did very, very well with Tejanos. Tejanos or Tejanos, if you're either one in Texas, please correct me. I'm very, very bad when it comes to Spanish. I'm trying to learn some languages right now, but I'm horrible when it comes to Spanish. Please correct me in the comment section. Basically, what happened was that it was a rightward shift at the border, and Greg Abbott still won re-election by a major amount. It's going to be a lower turnout election, so I don't see the state of Texas turning blue anytime soon, as much as the Democrats hopefully want to do that. But by the time they may even get close to turning it blue or turning it purple, it's very possible that the state of California could actually get purple itself. Very risky. So now they're in their backup plan. Their backup plan is to bring more and more people in to replace a certain voter base, which, as a matter of fact, is dying out. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but roughly 50% of the African-American community lives in the much, much larger cities. Now, this total is going to confuse you because it's going to say urban, but urban could mean small town. Urban could mean medium-sized town. Small and medium-sized towns typically tend to vote Republican, typically tend to be much, much more conservative, whereas super large towns, on the other hand, typically tend to be overtly liberal. Well, look at the mayors. New York, Democrat. Chicago, Democrat. LA, Democrat. San Francisco, Democrat. Atlanta, Democrat. St. Louis, Democrat. Detroit, Democrat. Minneapolis, Democrat. All have very, very, very large black populations. Same thing with Louisville, Kentucky. Same thing with Richmond, Virginia. Same thing with, I'd say Tampa, Florida to a certain degree. I said the same thing with Orlando, Florida. I would say the exact same thing with Montgomery, Alabama. Tuscaloosa. I would also say the same thing for Jackson, Mississippi, and New Orleans. Dallas, San Antonio, Houston. Well, maybe not so much San Antonio and Houston, but definitely Dallas. Fact of the matter is that there are a lot more black people living in the inner cities and these very, very liberal areas, these very liberal mayors. Fort Worth, I think their mayor just changed Republican, but still at the same time, I'm pretty sure you guys get the gist. These are also the areas of the highest amounts of crime and murder rates. Of course, if you go down the list, you'll see it more and more and more. What they're doing is they're sending these people to these cities, not to rural areas. They don't want to. They don't want to screw that up. Biggest reason why is because the rural small town population is suddenly becoming a serf class. We'll talk more about that in other videos, but it makes you think what happens next. Now, this next clip is roughly about 2 minutes long. We'll come back on the other side, and I'll give you guys your white pill for the actual video itself, because you guys are beginning to get that little red pill right now that kind of tells you what's really going on and why this is actually happening. But let's go ahead and get to the other part, and let's go ahead and close this video down so that way you guys can know what the overall end result is.
Somebody like me is guilty of as well, and have to like put myself in check. Like, knowing something isn't the same thing as understanding it. Like, and you have access to a lot of information, and then you have people believing that they know better than somebody who's practical in their field, and that's just not the way the world works, right?
Yeah, you have to actually live things and experience things to have real knowledge. It isn't something you can impart through just information per se.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's all of it is very like that is the most depressing. Like, out of all the conversations we just had, that might be the most depressing. Like, the war and everything, but it's like everything that's going on. I find like what's gone on in the last, because it's like it's been so quick. In the last 12 to 15 years, the shift in American values in the last 15 years has been so abrupt.
But why is that shift happening? Because millennials are entering the workforce. So it was a crazy moment for me when I used to play shows as a teenager. I'd go to a cafe and I'd play an open mic, and then one day I turned 21. And when I used to play shows as a teenager, everyone at the shows was always between the ages of like 16 and 20. Because as soon as you turn 21, you're at the bars. So I turned 21 and I'm like, I'm going to find an open mic. And I'm like, oh, here's one. I'm like, I go to openmic.com and I'm like, oh, it's at a bar. I show up, everyone's 40. And I was like, whoa, this is kind of weird. Like I've never experienced this. All of a sudden, it was like the training wheels come off and welcome to the real world. The entire bar is full of people of all different, there's like several decades here of different values, different worldviews. I had now at that point entered this adult space for the first time, playing shows with people with tremendous, way more experience, way more opinions, more knowledge, more wisdom. Some stupid people, don't get me wrong. And so what happens is we're like, how this country changing? It's not that people are becoming woke. It's that young people were indoctrinated to be woke, and now they're old enough to have an influence in the marketplace.
Typically tend to get a little bit more conservative over time. People begin to get a little bit older. When they get a little bit older, and if I didn't say it already, they typically tend to start seeing the world a little bit differently. I've said this before, and I'll say this one more time, and I'll keep saying this. My experience in life, I was born in 85. I'm what you call a Reagan baby. And of course, we'll talk about generations and stuff in videos here in the near future. But I need to go ahead and make this abundantly clear now. I am still very much of the mindset that sending somebody to college at the age of 18 is not a good idea. It just isn't. The reason why is because you basically don't have much work experience. You don't have much real life experience. So we send you to college, and therefore you become indoctrinated. I think the real age to go to college should at the very, very minimum be 21. I think that people should have at least 3 years working in the work world, or like myself, had done time in the military. This right here gets people. Used to dealing with people from other cultures, other backgrounds, people who disagree with them. It gives them the opportunity to have conversations. It gives them an opportunity to actually experience the real world before they go into the woke indoctrination camp. Chances are, if they're already armed with some type of real world experience, they won't be indoctrinated, and therefore it won't be in the situation that we're in now. But then again, though, that also leads us to the white pill of this video. So let's go ahead and play this, and I'll catch you guys on the other end.
Indoctrinated to be woke, and now they're old enough to have an influence in the marketplace. In politics.
But there's a white pill I'd like to drop on all this. Is I do think there's going to be a renaissance of liberty-minded people. It's going to come out of this movement. Because, as you pointed out, it's a path to destruction, destitution, economically, socially. It leads to decadence, and there's going to be a renaissance of liberty-minded people coming out of this woke contagion.
I hope that's true, but I'm going to be honest. Like when the number one place where I see this topic is when people talk about the housing market. When they talk about the price of housing, how so many young people are being your parents say go to college. You're like, oh, you went to college in a part-time job, blah blah blah. We see these very, very doomer descriptions that are accurate. They're accurate to the world we're living in right now. But I don't think that creates people who want free markets because they've been poisoned to believe that the free market is a.
Yeah, but I think we're gonna.
It's going to create communists and it's going to create socialists.
Yeah, but they're gonna experience the misery that brings, and
we're all going to experience.
Yeah, we all are,
and then we're going to have to fight our.
Sound like one, but it is a white pill. The reason why is because the immediate future will probably be hyper liberal. However, the thing is this right here, when things hit people so fast, after a while, you typically tend to snap out of it much, much faster. As I have said before, people typically tend to get a little bit more moderate and then eventually more conservative as they get older. They begin to go through phases. Of course, if you see people who are taking advantage of the gender thing on TikTok, after a while, people will look at them and they'll begin to make fun of, man, you really had flipped out. You really lost your mind in your teen years. People begin to get older. They typically tend to get a little bit smarter as they get older, typically tend to start seeing the error of their ways. What caused them to go through this? It's going to lead to a massive vacuum, yes, but I don't think it's going to last very long. And the other half of this little section of content will come out tomorrow where I talk about what probably happens in 2024, because right now the White House is trying to combat Islamophobia and anti-Semitism both at the same time, when a lot of people of both populations live in certain areas of this country that they would need to get to vote. It goes with identity politics, which we'll discuss a little bit further tomorrow. And it's probably going to lead to the libs right now taking one right in the face come 2024. They're desperately scrambling to try to save wherever they can because they're starting to lose certain pieces, certain coalitions in their overall rainbow coalition. We'll discuss that a little bit further tomorrow. But still, the thing is this right here. Babies will eventually be had again. We're not having babies for a multitude of reasons, and they're taking advantage of this by bringing in more people So in the hopes of not creating a brand new race, but in the hopes of replacing one. Whites, for the most part, I don't think are ever really and truly going to be replaced. The reason why is because, for the most part, it's still rural, still small town communities, and even suburban areas where you still got a lot of, still got a little bit more overall money, a little bit closed off. And of course, parents do in fact care. They've shown you that they do in fact care to a certain degree, especially about what happens going on in schools. That's all you have to. That's the reason why all you got to do is look at the overall election night. If you look deeper into it, you'll find out that people on more of the conservative side are starting to win at the local level, which, by the way, the local levels actually control your local curriculums and what goes on in your day-to-day life. That right there is your white pill. Fact of the matter is that the culture is beginning to change. And, of course, you've seen stuff like the Bud Light boycott. You've seen the anti-stuff with Dylan Mulvaney. You've seen the backlash against the UFC. You've seen the backlash against Target. People are in fact fighting back, and people are starting to wake up to this reality. And as a result of this, they're beginning to change their tune on a lot of the things that they actually supported. But we'll be discussing that a little bit more in tomorrow's video as far as the overall end result. But I wanted to kind of bring awareness to this issue. And with that right there, I'm going to go ahead and close this video out for the exception of one thing. Just a couple of very, very quick updates. This is only the only video that comes out on Thursday. It's going to come out a little bit later, right around 5 or 6 o'clock. But let's go ahead and get to this. We're going to be doing next year, I talked about opening up a bunch of channels, which, by the way, they've already been opened up as far as accounts is concerned, but we're going to be focusing on 3. What's going to happen is that next year, of course, as I've told you guys before, that we're going to be doing a lot more video essay type content. And the thing about the video essay type content is it allows me to be a little bit more detailed in the videos itself. It also allows me to do better overall research, and I'd expect like 1 to 2 videos a week. But what'll probably happen is that the short timer prepping playlist will still get some playtime here on this channel. Anything deemed unworthy of YouTube or too hot for YouTube will more than likely get posted on Rumble. I will try to fix that place up for you guys so that way you can get the much more, much scathier videos will be on that platform, or I may start releasing some projects over there. I'm not entirely sure how that's going to go, but I am tinkering with the idea of a name change. I've mentioned a couple of videos. Just tell me what you guys think. I'm thinking about disassociative indifference is what I'm thinking about. That's the one I'm going with. I'm thinking on right now. Either way, though, I'm going to go ahead and halt this video now and get a couple of videos out on Friday. Make sure you guys please hit the like button, subscribe, share the video, sign up in the comment section. Please give me your thoughts on the video. Please give me your thoughts on the potential name change. I'm not going to be changing it this year, maybe next year if I do it all, but I just want to know what you guys think. I also tell you guys this so that way if something does happen, and of course you get a notification, this video came from such and such. I just want you guys to know that that's way you're not completely caught off guard. With that right there being said, guys, make sure you guys hit the like button, subscribe, share the video, sign up in the comment section. Love to get you guys' thoughts. Once again, hit the notifications bell. I'll see you guys later.